minute here. So we'll have you come up and do the introductions.
All right,
We're at 6:58.
6:50. Well, I can't talk for another 2 minutes. I'll just stand here awkwardly. Everyone.
The owl will try to find you.
It can't apparently.
It's a predatory owl.
Well, I'll go ahead and start talking anyway, and if people miss it, they just miss it. They'll have to catch up some other
Okay.
time. Are we recording?
We are, yes, we are recording, and we've been recording for half an hour, and I'll cut that off.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone, virtually and in person for coming to this talk, kindly presented by Sara Cuadra Vargas from the Xerces Society, all about the monarch butterflies. And if you don't know anything about monarch butterflies, you will be amazed, and if you do, you will certainly learn something new. As usual, I implore you all to come to our other activities. Keep an eye on our website for our other activities. We have a new activity called Birds and Beer that has been occurring like once a month or so.
Yes.
Where we go for a little evening bird walk in the basin and cap it off with a pint. And this takes place at the golf course.
Woodley Lakes Golf Course. The next one is going to be April 15th to celebrate tax day.
When you will all be happy. It's a great way to meet other people in the chapter, since we don't have monthly in-person meetings now. And it's a great way to relax and get to know some people in the chapter and make some new friends. And with that, I think we are at the time now. I will turn it over.
Okay, to Sara, you're on.
Oh, and before I forget, sorry, Sara. Grab a milkweed on your way out. We have a whole table full of milkweed over there. Plant a milkweed and make a monarch butterfly happy.
Awesome.
Yes, and do you want to share now?
Sure.
Okay, you should be able to.
Okay.
And then once Sara gets started, I'll have someone run over there and turn off the very top switch, but give her a minute.
Beautiful. Okay. Oh, great. Oh, that's lovely. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that introduction, Kathy. So again, my name is Sara Cuadra Vargas, and I am with the Xerces Society, and today I'll be talking about Western monarch butterflies and why they need your help and what you can do to help them. Okay, so first of all, who is the Xerces Society? If you're unfamiliar, so the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation is a donor-supported nonprofit that protects our world through the conservation of invertebrates and their habitats. Xerces works throughout North America to conserve pollinators and other invertebrates, protect endangered species, and reduce pesticide use and impacts. Our staff use applied research, policy advocacy, public education, and on-the-ground habitat improvement to advance meaningful long-term conservation. Okay, so some of this stuff I will kind of breeze through, and then maybe we can ask some questions at the end if there's something that we're uncertain of. But this is our monarch life cycle zoomed in. So we have our egg stage, our larval stage, chrysalis, and adult with some nice milkweed there. So monarchs use milkweed as their host plant. Female monarchs lay their eggs where they spend 3 to 5 days in that stage, move on to a larval stage from 10 to 14 days, And then the the caterpillars go through 5 instars. And then the chrysalis stage happens for several days to weeks. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated, but adult monarchs during the breeding season live anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes 8 weeks. But the super generation that makes the migration can live 6 to 9 months. And I wanted to show you all this map of North America and show you the 2 populations of monarchs that we have. So east of the Rockies, we have the population known as the Eastern population that migrates down to Michoacan, Mexico in the winter months. And then in spring and summer, they make their way up through east of the Rockies, so through the United States up to southern Canada. And then, does this have a pointer? It does, lovely, okay, great. And then we have our western population that migrates to the Pacific coast at overwintering sites from Mendocino County in the north down to Baja California in the south. And those monarchs make their way to the interior to states like Idaho, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and so forth. And so we're going to be focusing on our western monarchs, as these are our monarchs here. And I will add a disclaimer that here in Southern California and the Bay Area, and including Southern Florida, we also have resident monarchs that breed year-round and do not migrate. Okay, so I'm going to be using terms like breeding monarchs and overwintering monarchs. So breeding monarchs look like this. So we have our female monarch here on this milkweed, and then we have our larval stage, our caterpillars going ahead and eating milkweed. As for overwintering monarchs, these are monarchs that make their way for us to the California coast, and they aggregate in clusters for protection from other predators like birds, but also against harsh weather like strong rain, winds, solar radiation. So yeah, overwintering monarchs, we also like to call them like clustering or aggregated monarchs. So talking about overwintering monarchs here in California, so we have over 400 sites across the state of California. Those are these like orange and blue polygons that are lining the coast there. And a majority of them are managed by either state parks, Department of Defense, municipalities, but some of them are privately owned. And what this does is this causes an uneven protection of overwintering sites. So any sites that are not within state parks, Department of Defense may be vulnerable to development, to tree cutting, to improper management, because we do have the coastal zone that does protect privately owned overwintering sites, as they're considered environmentally sensitive habitat areas, or ESHA. But it is the Coastal Commission that regulates the coastal zone, and sometimes it's more of a reactionary response. So if a private site does get damaged, then we find out from the Coastal Commission, or the Coastal Commission will be contacted after that damage has occurred. So just wanted to put that out there, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but something to think about. So as you may have heard, Western monarchs are in crisis. So for every 100 Western monarchs that were alive in the 1980s, fewer than 5 exist today. We've had a decline of over 95%. And let me see. Okay, there's my graph. Sorry, it's a little bit hard to see. But in 1997, The Western Monarch Count Community Science Program started as an effort to count monarchs when the population is at its bottleneck. So in the winter months. So if you see on this graph here, this bar here is 1997, the first one in green, and we had about 1.2 million monarchs in the year 1997. If you follow this teal line, this is the number of sites that were monitored across the state of California. So you'll see that over time, we've lost monarchs in green, though we've had an increase in participation across overwintering sites. And other, I guess, to put this into like the status of the population, under IUCN, monarchs are considered vulnerable, and under the Federal Endangered Species Act, they are proposed as threatened. That proposal was supposed to turn into a decision this past December, but the service has put the proposal into a long-term decision. So we expect at least another year for a decision to happen. So the earliest that would happen is December of this year, 2026. And monarchs are an indicator species. So the decline of monarchs often reflect the decline of other butterflies, but other insects as well. So there was a paper that came out in 2025 that looked at community science data that was recorded from the year 2000 to 2020. And there was a 20% decline of common butterflies across the United States. So 1 in 5 butterflies have been lost in those 20 years. So we see the monarch as this big, emblematic, beautiful representation of the decline of butterflies, but also other insects. And that's very relevant to the Audubon Society, as we know that the decline of insects is also related to the decline of birds and other animals that depend on insects. So the decline works its way up the trophic levels. So what are the primary threats to monarchs? I'll be talking about the last 3 a little bit, but first of all, loss of milkweed breeding habitat due to herbicide-resistant crops is something that is very relevant, especially in the East, where there is a lot of herbicide used in agricultural spaces. Pesticide use kills non-target insects and degrades habitat. Climate change affects monarch populations in a number of ways, and I'll talk about that a little bit. And then logging and development have shrunk monarch overwintering sites. So talking a little bit about pesticides. So pesticide can have a variety.
Cook the corn.
Okay, I'll come
And
in.
I'll just kind of go through this very briefly. These are my colleagues' slides. And if you have questions, we can talk about that a little bit after, but primarily research that's done on insecticides is done on European honeybees and not monarch butterflies or other insects. But what little research there is has shown that there is a reduced body size, larval growth, wing length, oviposition, and longevity of monarchs that are exposed to different pesticides, and that larvae exposed to fungicides had smaller wings as adults. So these things can obviously affect the quality of life of monarchs and affect their survival. So how does monarch habitat get contaminated? So pesticides don't stay where they're applied. So plants around agricultural fields are commonly contain pesticide residues from sprays or seed treatments. And we know this is like the common story of pesticides like being used in agricultural spaces. However, agriculture is not the only problem. So I'm not sure if this, okay, I'm hoping it just works as an image. Okay, so there was an incident that happened in 2024 at Pacific Grove, at the overwintering site at the Pacific Grove Natural History Museum, where there were 200 monarchs that were discovered here in this like puddle. So they were puddling together. They were like, just like behaving very erratically, and many were dead. So 200 of them died. There were only 2,000 monarchs at the time at that overwintering site. So out of those 200 monarchs, 10 of those monarchs were collected and sent to laboratories to get tested for pesticide exposure. And out of those 10, like all of the 10 contained about 7 pesticides per insect. And it was determined that there were 3 pyrethroid insecticides at or near lethal dose. So pyrethroids are often used in just like regular mosquito abatement. So that's something that you would commonly use to get rid of mosquitoes like around the house, like maybe like a corporation uses it around their buildings, like the city might use it. So pyrethroids are kind of these common insecticides that we interact with regularly. Moving on to climate change. So climate change can affect the species. So if you'll see in that graph that I presented from the Western monarch count, from 2020 to 2025, we've had the 3 lowest population counts since the beginning of the standardized protocol. In 2020, we only had 2,000 monarchs that were found across the state of California. In 2024, there were 7,000 monarchs. And in 2025, we had about 12,000 monarchs across the state. So much lower than our 1.2 million that we started with in 1997. And monarch populations are bouncy. So many insect populations are similar, where they're affected by like changes in annual precipitation, in drought, heat waves. So our academic partners have suggested that these declines are the result of drought, of prolonged heat events. So in the year 2024, there were long periods of heat waves, especially within the Central Valley. So that could have affected survivalship of monarch larvae. But also the previous years also affect the next year's population. So if you're starting with a small amount of monarchs, you might not end up with a larger population the upcoming year. But climate change also affects habitat. So since the 1990s, over 60 overwintering sites have been destroyed across the state of California. And some of this destruction is caused by severe winter storms or wildfire. So this is an example. So we're all here in Los Angeles County. The Palisades fire in 2025 affected 2 active overwintering sites. This picture here on the right is of the Lower Topanga overwintering site, where we had the first year, 2023, about 110 monarchs. The fire happened during the 2024 overwintering season, and we only had, I want to say, about 12 monarchs at the site. I will say, this is a site that I monitor regularly with the Resource Conservation District of the Santa Monica Mountains. And we did a survey about a week before the fire broke out. There were no monarchs there at the time, but the habitat was affected. But I'll show you the results of, good work that's happening there later in our slides. There's also the impacts of development. So This is a recent case that happened at the Vista Del Mar site in Ventura City, in Ventura County. And you might have heard about this, but this is a privately owned site where 8 eucalyptus trees were cut down while monarchs were roosting in the trees. There were constituents and the community that were present, and they were able to stop the further damage from happening. This was illegal, so the landowner did not have a permit to do this work during this time. And there were a few news articles that talked about what happened. And this was in December 2025. And I'll bring this up again later in my slides as well. But just wanted to show that we're losing sites almost every year. So what actions can we take to help monarch butterflies? So I wanted to point you all to our Western Monarch call to action. So we have, you don't have to remember everything right now, but I'll kind of go through the steps here of restoring breeding habitat and migratory habitat, protecting monarchs and their habitat from pesticides, protecting and managing California overwintering sites, spreading the word about monarch and pollinator conservation, and participating in community science. So let's start with the first one. Restore monarch breeding and migratory habitat. So for monarch breeding habitat, monarchs require 3 things. They need a safe habitat that is free of pesticides. They need nectar plants, so diversity of nectar resources, so plants that bloom ideally all year round. We're in Southern California and we get to, have sunshine almost every day, so we can have plants that bloom all year round. And we also need host plants, so like milkweed that Joanne brought today. Those will support monarch butterflies. I did want to talk about tropical milkweed and OE. So tropical milkweed is characterized by this red and yellow bloom. You might find it at stores like Home Depot. It's non-native, it's evergreen, it blooms all year round, and it's associated with winter breeding of monarchs, a time when monarchs should be in reproductive diapause when they're reserving their fat stores. And yeah, they shouldn't be breeding. But winter breeding monarch populations in California are 9 times as likely to have high levels of OE, or I'm not going to pronounce the Latin name, but it's a parasite that affects monarchs. So they have a 9 times more likely chance to have a high load of this parasite compared to overwintering monarchs. And talking about OE, let's see. So OE can negatively affect monarchs. You might see monarchs with crinkled wings when they emerge from a chrysalis, and they'll just, again, it affects their quality of life. So this monarch here, for example, is likely not going to have either a successful migration or a successful time breeding. Instead, you can plant native milkweed. And I have 2 examples here, narrowleaf milkweed and woolly pod milkweed, that are appropriate for this area. Xerces recommends planting milkweed within its native range. So you can go to calscape.org and find your local native milkweed. I'm a big fan of Calscape because you can also see which nurseries near you might also carry that milkweed. You can give them a call. That's probably best. Sometimes the inventory is not up to date on Calscape. I wanted to talk about the Xerces Habitat Kit program. So this is a program where Xerces offers free native plants to different projects that get approved. So for the habitat kits, what that is creates habitat for monarchs, for other pollinators to address habitat loss. these plants are bee-safe plants, and what we mean is that those plants are not exposed to pesticides. They're native plants, so they're more likely to adapt to the different climates within their native ranges. And there's a diversity of plants for different pollinators to support biodiversity. And these habitat kits support bumblebees, monarchs, other declining species, and overall diversity, so a variety of insect taxa, and could probably also benefit birds as well. So there's different kit types and regions, and there's different project types. Here in Southern California, I want to say there's a handful. There's a garden kit, there's a hedgerow kit, I think there's a riparian kit. There's a variety of project types, but it's also a way to engage with your community. So the habitat kits are intended for working lands, for public spaces. So it could be a community garden, it could be a school, it could be maybe just some open land that you have access to. And one thing I didn't include here is that proposals are open for the habitat kits. I also do not have a link, but if you search up Xerces California habitat kits, you'll be able to find that proposal. I think proposals close April 10th, which is coming up. So if any of you are interested in applying for these habitat kits, you would apply now, and then your application is reviewed over the next couple of months. And then I think by the summertime, you're notified of approval, and then plants are ready to be picked up in the fall for fall planting. And the Xerces website also has a variety of resources. I brought some of those in person today, but some of my favorites are like the nesting and overwintering habitat. That's not for monarchs, but that's how you can create overwintering habitat in your backyard for other butterflies, for other insects, for bees. We also have recommended plants for pollinators and beneficial insects. One that I did not bring also is the California nectar plants in the green there. And we also have a guide on buying bee-safe plants. So having conversations with your nurseries and asking them if they're using pesticides in their production. So protect monarchs and their habitat from pesticides. So ideally, we want to reduce or eliminate the use of pesticides. So we want to prioritize non-chemical methods. So if you're dealing with non-native plants, either in your backyard or in restoration, you want to prioritize hand or mechanical removal. We understand that sometimes that isn't possible for stuff like arundo that has spread pretty heavily. There is I think there is a time and place to use herbicides appropriately. However, we do recommend judicious use of herbicides. So trying to reduce the amount of spray that comes off of whatever you're spraying, if that means like painting herbicides, just reducing that spray as much as possible. And then manage pests without chemicals. So it's a little bit hard to see, but this is a native milkweed here, and it's covered in oleander aphids. And usually we recommend like just letting them be. You all are here part of the Audubon Society, so you know that insects are great for birds. So likely this is going to bring more birds and other predators to the aphids, but you can also just wash off the aphids with your hose as well, or squeeze them in between your fingers.
With these concerns about let me
Okay.
give you
Manage overwintering sites. So what does that mean? So remember the story I told you about the site damage in Ventura? Well, as of February 2026, trees at overwintering sites in the city of Ventura are protected from trimming or removal. And there are exemptions that require a permit. So if a landowner does want to do any of this work, they need to apply for a permit with the city. And there's civil penalties for violations. So what triggered this policy was the community reacting to the destruction that happened at the Vista Del Mar overwintering site. They went to city council meetings. They contacted Xerces to get a letter that was read at city council. They worked together as a community to stop any further destruction in their city. So we see this as a big win. And this is really a bottom-up effect. So if our coastal zone cannot protect our overwintering sites, maybe municipalities can. And we also have other success stories. So we have land managers that are working to restore habitat. In Southern California, that top photo there is a photo of Camp Pendleton biologists and staff from Environment for the Americas that were planting some milkweed at Camp Pendleton. Camp Pendleton is huge. They have space for milkweed inland, but they also have overwintering sites on the coast as well. This bottom left photo here is of the Lower Topanga overwintering site that was damaged in the Palisades fire. The Resource Conservation District of the Santa Monica Mountains and State Parks Angeles District have been working together to restore that site. And there were 160 plants that were planted in February at that site. So there's ongoing stewardship that's happening there. And lastly, here on the bottom right corner, this is at the San Clemente overwintering site in Orange County. And that's part of the State Parks Orange Coast District. So they've been working with Xerces to improve their overwintering sites by planting nectar plants and managing the trees that they have and planting more trees and wind shelter for monarchs. And spread the word. So share monarch conservation messages at school, work, places of worship with friends and family and on social media. If you have a fantastic native plant garden, you want to share that, like, please do, like, please boast about the work that you're doing. I have no doubt that you all are already boasting about the work you're already doing for the Audubon Society. But you can also install a pollinator habitat sign. These are available from the Xerces Society, and they let your neighbors know that you're either leaving the leaves or creating pollinator habitat or have habitat that's pesticide free. And then also hand in hand with my last point, volunteering with a local organization to restore habitat for monarchs and other pollinators. And oftentimes the work that we do for monarchs and pollinators benefit other wildlife as well. And participate in community science. So data collected through community science can directly inform conservation strategies. So firstly, I'll talk about the Western Monarch Milkweed Mapper. This is a great time to engage with this project. It's really easy. If you happen to take a photo of a monarch or milkweed, usually where milkweed is already existing, where it grows naturally, you can upload that photo to iNaturalist and tag the Western Monarch Milkweed Mapper project. That helps us determine where monarchs are in their migration, what they're doing, what they're up to. It's really simple. It only takes a few minutes. And I have a feeling you guys are already on my iNaturalist. Okay, we also have our Monarch Nectar Plant Database. And if you happen to see monarchs using different plants for nectar, we love to get that data as well. This is how we build our plant list for different states, is through these observations. And right now, that database is on Survey 123, but it will be transitioning to iNaturalist pretty soon to make it more accessible. And the Western Monarch count. So Pat has helped with the Western Monarch count, but this is an effort that we do, also Stephanie, this is an effort that we do every overwintering season from the months of October through January. And we get to monitor at different sites. We go out early in the morning with our binoculars and we scan trees for monarchs that are sleeping, usually when it's pretty chilly. And we collect that data, and that data helps us determine the population for the year. If you have questions about the Western Monarch count, please feel free to ask me. I help coordinate the Los Angeles and Orange counties. And I have my new co-coordinator here as well for Los Angeles County, Stephanie. There's also the Project Monarch app. So some of you, well, I assume a lot of you are familiar with MODIS tracking, but this is a new technology using these solar-powered radio tags. And the Xerces Society and other partners were able to tag monarchs last overwintering season at different sites from Santa Cruz down to Santa Barbara. On this app, you can see exactly where monarchs are. The tags that are applied to the monarchs are very lightweight. They're solar powered, so they don't have batteries, but they also work with Bluetooth. So your Bluetooth phones can help determine the location of monarchs. And we're starting to see monarchs depart from overwintering sites. Many of them are still at overwintering sites, believe it or not. And we've had a few that have just passed away naturally due to the overwintering season. But yeah, it's a very cool app. I encourage you to download it and look at the latest detections. There's also monarchs that were tagged at the overwintering sites in Michoacan, Mexico, and those are making their way back up into the United States as well. So really just cool technology to see. And we are a donor-based nonprofit, so we encourage you to become a member and support our cause. And with that, I'd love to take any questions, but thank you so much for having me. This is a great opportunity to speak with you all.
And let me just make it, people, we have 37 people online. We're getting some questions and comments in the chat.
Okay.
And for the people online, if you have more questions, please put them in chat, or you can use the raise your hand feature. So we'll take some questions here.
I'll go first. It's my privilege. I'm a little confused by the overwintering population. Do they then, so they spend their winters along the coast in these overwintering sites. Do they then disperse up north for breeding? Or do they, like the rest of the migratory population?
So that is a great question. The textbook answer would be that they make their way inland and they go through their migration there. But with the Project Monarch app, we're seeing monarchs do stuff that we wouldn't expect. So we're seeing them go to different overwintering sites. Maybe it's somewhere in Northern California, or they're making their way to the Central Valley. The migration is not as linear as we expect, as it's shown in that
Oops, let me get that off here.
No, you're fine.
Here we go. Whoops, sorry.
That's okay.
It'll go away in a minute.
There's quite a few slides too.
There's too many things going on here.
But there was also a paper, there it is. There was a paper that was published by a professor at UC Davis in 2017 that found that monarchs are not, they're also not following this linear pattern of migration. So there were monarchs that were born in Southern California that migrated to the Bay Area, and that's where they migrated to, and vice versa. So it's not this linear migration as we expect, and the MODIS tracking is helping us figure out these pathways of migration.
And one last little bit of that, this population, this resident population, do they also have like 4-week and 6-week and 9-month life cycles like the migrating ones?
So we assume that they have shorter life cycles, that they're living 2 to 6 or 2 to 8 weeks. Sorry, 4 to 6 or 4 to 8 weeks. And they're not living as long as the super generation that makes the migration. Thank you. Yeah.
Extension of that to know why some butterflies are migrating and some.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this happens in areas with very mild climate, like the Bay Area, Southern California, Southern Florida. We don't have a big change in temperature, or we don't have like extreme seasons like many other states do. So we think that monarchs just hang out if there's like evergreen milkweed, like tropical milkweed, sometimes even our own native milkweed with odd precipitation patterns that we have. Native milkweed can continue to be green throughout the winter instead of dying back. So monarchs are just, it's like they're on a permanent vacation. There's no reason to leave.
Let's see what we've got in chat here.
Okay.
Um. From Brian Cook, we checked our yard today and found at least 7 caterpillars and a number of eggs in our milkweed in the front yard, and a couple caterpillars and eggs in the backyard, all native milkweed. I'd ask Brian where he is. That's a lot. I haven't seen any yet, other than the ones at the fire station after that very odd October rainstorm. The milkweed came back up. We hadn't had monarchs all summer last year. All of a sudden, we've got monarchs in November.
Yeah.
From Doug Heilman, I have this type of milkweed and I do get larvae and I see monarchs. Should I remove this milkweed? And I'm sure he's referring to the tropical. So the question is, should he remove his tropical milkweed?
So with tropical milkweed, we do offer options. Since it doesn't die back in the winter, if you don't want to remove the tropical milkweed, you can cut it back. You can cut it back in November and continuously cut it back throughout the winter. What that does is that eliminates or reduces the possibility of accumulating a lot of OE, a lot of the OE parasite, and it means that the tropical milkweed is not blooming. Ideally, number one, we recommend replacing with native milkweed and also following that pattern. So removing the milkweed in November when monarchs stop breeding.
Okay. A question, how do we access the habitat kits? And then Xerces.org habitat kit program on your website?
Yes, on the website.
Okay. A comment again from Brian Cook. Plant buckwheat and yarrow to attract lacewings, ladybugs, and hoverflies. I've noticed that. I'm infested with them.
Great, great.
Hosing down milkweed for aphids also washes away eggs. We've made peace with aphids. And I ignore the aphids. I don't know.
Yeah, that is a good point. So before you do wash off, I would recommend inspecting the plant to see if there's any eggs. I like to squish them. I think, sorry. Sorry. But that's the most direct way. But also, yes, you can live with aphids. As long as it's not negatively affecting the plant, it should be okay.
Yeah, I ignore them. Lovely presentation. Thank you from, Barbara Eisen Herman. Question, I have the red-orange milkweed in my yard. It attracts the monarchs. I see eggs and some butterflies. Should I remove the milkweed I have again? So you've answered
Yes.
that it, you know,
Ideally.
definitely cut it down in the winter. And maybe start gradually replacing.
Yes, correct. Although tropical milkweed does spread very quickly.
Yes, another, I don't spray pesticide in my garden, but I do in my foundation. When you say no pesticides, do you mean the house foundation too?
Yes. And I would recommend, I'm not an expert on pesticides, but spraying in foundations can also lead, like, let's say you spray and then there's a big rain. So those pesticides can leak into the soil and they can contaminate your garden. I would recommend going to the Xerces website. We do have lots of resources on the pesticide issue. We also have a YouTube page as well, and we have recordings of different webinars on pesticide use.
I wonder what, pesticides like vector control uses against mosquitoes, because I know that's an issue, especially with the new Egyptes mosquitoes that are having such a problem. Do you know, are they using the pyrethroids?
It is probably a pyrethroid mix. Yes. Yes. And just to say, like, you know, I live in a very old home and unfortunately, like, we had to get our house tented for termites. So that is something also that can affect insects. But there's a slide that I didn't include in here, but there's also different ways to buffer insecticide use. So some of that is temporal. So these pesticides, the insecticides will degrade over time. So that's another option is, you know, allowing time between planting habitat and using these sometimes necessary insecticides. And there was a question back here. Gentleman had a question.
This is not part of your call to action, so it's another question. I was on an island in the middle of the Pacific, the part of the Pacific, called Rota, part of the Northern Marianas Islands, north of Guam. And I swear there was a bunch of monarchs in the fields there. I went, how the heck could some monarchs make their way from this to thousands of miles, most of the way to Japan? Or was I fooling myself, or was I right about those things?
You're probably right. And there are monarchs that occur worldwide. So I don't know much, but they probably have different behaviors than the monarchs that we have here in North America. The North American monarchs are the natal species of monarchs. So like plants that we've moved around to different parts of the world, monarchs are also similar. So it could very well be that you saw monarchs.
Very surprised.
We've got, oh, go ahead, and then we've got more online.
2022, Ventura County banned sale of tropical milkweed. Why are you banning it here? What, are you seriously working on that?
You know, that is a good question.
I mean, they're selling this stuff in Home Depot. That's all. We need to stop this.
Yeah.
Tropical milkweed.
Yeah, I agree. Xerces is not working on that right now, but I have the same question, like, why not Los Angeles County?
We should be. But that's for our next conservation meeting.
Okay, well, we can partner with you and start getting each other. This is an extension of that, you know, that there's a lot of work being done on homes and insurance to overcome grasses and all the natural desert scapes. Educational remarks, their coordination between what is being planted and suggested for these and the Xerces Society and the Audubon Society. I know it's an enormous amount of work, but we can see that right from the get-go, you would want to ensure that when something is being done and being planted, that it's being done correctly.
Yes, and you kind of hit the nail on the head that there's just so many programs. So are you talking about like a lawn conversion program? So the issue is you have different entities offering these programs, and there isn't really a standardization across all of these entities. So I would say that Xerces is probably one of the more restricted organizations, because we're saying most things like your garden should be native. It should be pesticide free. Whereas it could be LADWP or Metropolitan Water District that say you want a California friendly garden. So you want plants that are drought tolerant. That doesn't necessarily mean native plants, and it doesn't necessarily mean pesticide free. So I think there's a lot of work to be done and there's a lot of things happening, and maybe if we all collaborated, then we can be on the same page and there could be like a standardization of all of this. But yeah, it's just, there's so many different programs. Yes.
Some more online. A comment, I've seen a lot of monarchs have been counted in Mexico recently.
Yeah.
What does that mean for monarchs rebounding?
So the monarch population in Mexico is up for the previous overwintering season. However, it's still below the level of recovery. And maybe I can bring up, I don't have any graphs on the eastern population, but for the western population, in the year 2021, right after we had 2,000 monarchs across the state, there were, I think the year after, there were about 300,000 monarchs. So that's a huge increase, but that's still way below the recovery of monarchs. So for the western monarchs, the numbers would have to be in the low millions for us to say, yes, we've done it. We've recovered western monarchs. And similarly for eastern monarchs, it's the same thing. Numbers are better, they're improving, but they're not at recovery.
Okay, amazing presentation, thank you, from April Wells and from Melinda Muller. I live in Studio City, lawn free front and back, and this past spring I noticed monarchs passing through my yards. You mentioned researching to see what vegetation they're gravitating to. Please mention a few again or add a link for that. My yards are drought tolerant and native plant based. If I were to plant to target invitations to monarchs, what would be what would the top choices be?
Yes. Let me get to that slide. And I'm also going to pull up my plant list. Okay, so that link there, xerces.org /monarch dash nectar dash plant dash guides. That is our database. However, we're going to be moving that database to iNaturalist pretty soon. So please, I think May is the month where we're aiming to have that project up and running. And it will probably be called Monarch Nectar Plant Database or something similar by the Xerces Society. But for nectar plants, so I just pulled up the recommended plants for pollinators and beneficial insects. This is not the monarch nectar plant list, but let's see. There's a few. Gum plant. If you can put gum plant in your yard, it looks like a sunflower. It's all yellow and it has like a gummy sac in the middle of it. So Grindelia hirsutula is the species that I have on here, but there's also other species of Grindelia that are gum plant that are also appropriate. That one is a good one for monarchs. Common yarrow is really great. It has like a little platform for monarchs to perch on. Coyote bush is great. That's often found near overwintering sites.
Yeah.
Commonly in coastal sage scrub. Good like hedge plant if you want to put it in your yard. Let's see, what else? Encelia, yes, Encelia californica. So bush sunflower is another one. Yes, I recommend, and I can also maybe follow up with you all with some links to send to the group as well, since I don't have any.
We can
links
put an
on me.
update up on the website with a little article.
Great.
You know, I've noticed at my house, my neighbors, they've got a tropical motif, so there's a lot of lantana. The monarchs love their lantana, so I yell at them, I say, come back, you're in my yard.
Yeah, they love lantana, yes.
They
And
do.
also-
Not a native, but I have to say, all the butterflies and moths love the lantana.
I think the nectar is nectar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Similar plant would be verbena, so like sand verbena. So if you're in a desert or a beach environment, you can put sand verbena in your
Here, the
yard.
western vervain does very
Yes.
well here.
Yes, that's another great one.
And we do over in the restoration area by the wildlife lake, there's a lot of gum plant in there. So that's good. I've got a few more questions if I may.
Sure.
How useful are rooftop milkweed, green roofs and gardens, especially large high buildings? Might it be good if, virtual eco corridors were established on large buildings in a line across the cityscape?
I say yes. The
I do
more
too.
habitat, the better.
Yes. Can you plant milkweed in a small pot?
So milkweed would be best in a larger pot, in a pot that is pretty deep. So you want the deep roots, you want enough space for the roots. You might have some experience with planting. Have you planted in containers?
Yeah, it takes a little longer for them to establish because typically they grow through rhizomes, so they like to spread. So you just might see that the plant is not as large as compared to a plant that might be ingrown.
Yeah, and I think the biggest plant you can manage, or biggest pot, it's because they do spread by rhizomes, so they need that underground area. What does a migration of monarchs hatched on our local plants look like? Do they leave here in California and go where?
Yeah, good question. So they might go to Nevada or Utah, or they might go to other parts of the state. So similar to what we were talking about before. We go back to our map. So we think monarchs make their way inland to Nevada, Utah, Idaho. But it might not be as linear as we think. They might be going, to the desert. Yeah, I would say this is a good plug for a documentary. So there is a documentary called Western Monarch Butterflies Protecting Our Pollinators by Ian Nelson. He is a independent filmmaker who produced a film kind of following the Western monarch migration. And he shows monarchs on the western side of the Sierras and monarchs on the eastern side of the Sierras. So they do have to make this big journey over the Sierra Mountains. But we don't know. We don't know where this monarch from Southern California might go.
So it's not a stampede.
No, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, other, any urban habitat that we can squeeze in is obviously beneficial and,
Yes.
we'd like to, I think city planning should look at that. This is an interesting question. Is the ban on monarchs by California Fish and Wildlife still in effect? It is very frustrating. I'm not able to bring in the cats because the wasps keep eating my caterpillars in I read that and I was confused at first, but yeah, I think that you can't raise monarchs. Is that correct?
Correct. And they're actually, so I think they're referring to under California Department of Fish and Wildlife, you cannot handle a monarch unless you have a scientific collecting permit. So what that means is you shouldn't be bringing monarchs indoors or moving them. But monarchs are an educational tool. So Xerces, we're not the monarch police. We know that monarchs can have their place in education, and it's a great thing to see monarchs go from larva to chrysalis to an adult butterfly. We're not going to tell on you if you touch a monarch or if your kid touches a monarch. But we recommend just letting caterpillars and chrysalises exist naturally. So they do serve as food for other wildlife, if that's birds or lizards, spiders, wasps, tachinid flies. There's benefits for other wildlife from monarchs, and these species have co-evolved with monarchs over time. So I think it's less than 10% of monarchs make it to adulthood. But that is a common problem with yellow jackets.
Yeah.
And so I would say maybe if you make the area less habitable for yellow jackets in some way, then maybe you might have less of this predation.
And yellow jacket traps are very effective, and they don't trap any other insects. And if you put the traps out early enough, you catch the queen, because she comes out first. And if you catch the queen, that greatly reduces the likelihood that you'll have a nest in the nearby area.
Well, they're miserable too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, and you can get the disposable traps, at the hardware store or whatever. They're very effective.
Good information to have.
Yeah, thank you.
And then, thank you for the information and, your time, to give the presentation. One gentleman would like you to run through all the slides at the end again and do realize, I think we could probably do that when we're done with questions, just boom right through the whole slideshow.
Okay.
But it will also, this is being recorded and it will, be on the website in a couple of days probably. And someone notes, yes, they like lantana. And the gentleman gets adult monarchs on his butterfly bush and a yellow and black variety. That's interesting. Someone is recommending at least a 5-gallon pot. And remember to water in winter when it should be getting water. We have a comment, Greater Valley Glen Council's Parks and Medians Committee plans to reinvigorate a butterfly garden in Valley Glen Park. They welcome attendees to meetings, so does the E&M committee, and this is for Greater Valley Glen Council. It's probably one of our neighborhood councils. So we can make that available in the chat later.
Sounds like they need to contact you about one of your kids.
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, that sounds good. And at the end, can you mention when and what time the next Birds and Beer is? Yes, it will be tax day, April 15th. We will meet at the Woodley Lakes Golf Course flagpole this time. I got in trouble last time. We lost people. And this time we're going to do an evening walk around Lake Balboa.
Nice.
So there we go. And that is the end of the questions. And do we have?
Do they still migrate a lot to Pismo Beach? Cause I know I've been there before where they
Yes.
see.
Yes. So Pismo Beach is still an overwintering site. This past year was not the best for them, but overall for the entire state, it was not a good year for monarchs. But yes, they're still using the trees at Pismo. I haven't been, that's the one place I haven't been.
So amazing, the shirts from it.
Yeah. I heard it's like small, but it's great, and they have like all these volunteers and interpretation and.
We went to Pacific Grove. Yeah, we went to Pacific Grove and there wasn't huge quantities, but there was a lot, including a lot of them flying around in the
And you
other
think you're
plants.
looking at leaves and having.
Yeah.
If you look at the telescope, it's all these butterflies. It's
Yes.
amazing.
Yes, it's a great thing to see when we do our monarch trainings. We say like, look for the Dorito chips. Cause they look like Doritos, like all clumped together.
Oh, someone is asking what time Birds and Beer is. Priority. I know it is a priority. Please, I'm gonna be sending out the announcement and the Eventbrite soon because of the time, we wanna go, when we're out right around sunset. So I'm thinking it'll be 7 o'clock when we'll meet.
But always check the website for
Right.
the most up-to-date information about our events. Cause things change.
They change, and what I need to do, I need to look at the calendar, make sure that we're good for reserving that night. And then I will make every effort to have it up on Eventbrite tomorrow. And also, we send out an email blast about it. And the email blast will also have some conservation information. There's a lot going on with conservation right now, including managing to get more funding for our city parks, which have been starved for 15 years.
Very important.
So, yeah, so be on the lookout for an email blast coming out in a day or two, with the upcoming event and, some conservation information.
And before we lose people, I want to make a couple of announcements, 2 quick announcements. One is our next presentation is April 23rd. It is a Zoom presentation, so no in-person component, and it's with Ben Novak. He's going to be talking about bringing extinct species back using genetics, which should be interesting. I don't know if he's planning on I want to see the moa come back. I don't know if you know what that's, like 11-foot tall bird that went extinct within you know, the fairly recent past. But, last few hundred years, that should be, so that should be really interesting. I also want to talk about and make a plug for Birdathon, which is our annual fundraiser to support our Sepulveda-based environmental education program, where we sponsor several thousand LAUSD Title I school kids to come out to the Sepulveda Basin and learn about plants and birds and the water cycle and pond life, and they get to look through microscopes, and they get to we give them binoculars so they can watch the birds, and it's just a marvelous experience for these kids, some hands-on science that they may not get otherwise have an opportunity for, and a chance to, see egrets and pelicans and all kinds of marvelous stuff, and kids just love it, and the teachers love it too. And the Birdathon is the way we raise money for that. And what that means is you go on our website, you find a team of hardy birders who are going to go out sometime, usually in the months of April and May, and count, every bird species that they see. And you can pledge to support them with just a straight cash amount, or are we still doing per species?
No, if you can do per species, but multiply it yourself. It's too hard to.
Well, make it easy, pledge $1 per species, okay? And then we'll report on how many species of birds each team sees, and then you can fulfill your pledge. Or you can even volunteer to be on a team. All that information is on our website. It's a lot of fun. Please participate.
Yes. Okay.
And thank you again, Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And thank you all. Thank you.
And thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to just zoom right through your slides?
Sure.
Like he said a second each. We're gonna have it online okay, but it'll make him happy.
Okay.
Oh, and
No
forget
problem.
the milkweed.
Yes.
Yeah, the milkweed has to go home. It needs to go home. You're welcome. Thank you so soon.
It also involved itself in the decline of the bee population.
Yes. Yes, we work on bumblebees as well as other native bees as well.
About that, then. Jobs.
Yes, correct.
What?
Yes, and I put out a pamphlet about our bumblebee conservation. So we have the California Bumblebee Atlas, which is a community science project, and we engage folks to go out and survey for California bumblebees. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hey. Oh, thank you. Sorry, I'm doing this.
Generous yeah. Is there a period of time when my son said that he was here a few years ago? So many, I need to go home and tell him. To 2 million to weapons.
To a few thousand, yeah. I wonder if he might be talking about the painted ladies. So in 2019, we had a big migration of painted ladies who have a more unpredictable migration than monarchs do.
Okay.
There's more like questions about them than there are about monarchs, but they're very similar. They look very similar.
Okay.
And
So the migrations of the monarchs are all after the end of the winter, or?
yeah, so they start leaving overwintering sites sometimes as early as December.
Oh, okay.
From December through February is really the time that they mostly move away from overwintering sites. Males stick around they're the last to leave. So we might have monarchs, we still have monarchs at overwintering sites right now, like in Santa Cruz.
I'll sit through them for, you can talk and then I'll
I
sit.
think I got it.
You got them?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, that's a different slide you didn't show.
I didn't show that one. That was my bonus
Yeah.
in case people had questions about that.
Nice.